During the budget debate in 2021, DPM Heng Swee Keat said that no responsible leader will reveal the size of the reserves. PSP disagrees. We believe a responsible leader should reveal the size of the reserves for the following reasons. First, as the collective owners of the reserves, Singaporeans deserve to have access to the precise information about our reserves, the returns, and how it is being invested and managed. A clear statement by the government on the size and performance of our financial reserves every year will go a long way to facilitate proper discussion on taxation and spending policies, and to quash fake news about the insolvency of our CPF, the size of our external debt, and the performances of GIC and Temasek.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move the following amendments. First, in line 1, to delete review and insert ensure. Second, in line 1, to delete current. Third, in line 2, after the words reserve accumulation policies, to insert always stay fiscally responsible and sustainable. And fourth, in line 3, to delete continuing to save and insert planning and providing. So I beg to move. Thank you.
Mr. Leong says all the time, we are saving, we are accumulating, this is our money, you're not giving it back to Singaporeans, and the time has come when you're over-accumulating and saving too much. What's missing from that assertion is the recognition that when we take it and put it in the reserves and it's invested by GIC, 50% of the projected income comes back every year into the annual budget. And when it comes back into the annual budget, it forms about 20% of our annual budget. It's together with all the other revenue, and it enables us to do all the things I talked about earlier: healthcare, education, transport, subsidies, CDC vouchers, all of that. So the impression that has been consistently put forward is as though the government is taking the money and squirreling it away and not sharing it with Singaporeans. That is not correct. The government is taking it, investing it, and making sure that Singaporeans get it back every year through the NIRC with interest or with earnings on the income. So I just want everybody in this chamber to remember that both PSP and WP have called on us to disclose the full size of our reserves. Why we do not disclose the full size of our reserves? Our reserves are our strategic asset against crises and emergency scenarios. Such scenarios could threaten our economy and livelihoods, or even our existence as a nation. Then I noticed that today the argument has moved on a little bit, and it said that, well, you need to disclose the full size of the reserves and have full transparency so that we can have a conversation and a debate. If Singaporeans needed somebody to defend them, on the one side, you have the PAP, and the other side, you have opposition. The PAP keeps some powder dry to make sure that we will always be able to defend Singaporeans in crisis. The opposition approach is, I have to defend you, but by the way, let me just tell everybody everything, all my secrets, all my assets, and I will defend you. And I think the judgment for Singaporeans is, who do you think would be able to defend you strategically in such a situation?
I think it's more accurate to say that, don't you think it's more accurate to say that what the opposition has proposed is that the government should not take everything from us until we are very weakened now. We can't even defend ourselves.
We brought forward the FY 2009 budget to deal with the crisis, and we had a crisis budget. In the budget, this is a budget where we had the job support scheme, and we were going to draw $4.9 billion from the past reserves. And in the budget debate, Mr. Low Teow Kiang questioned why the government wanted to draw down on past reserves instead of using savings from the government's current budget. He said, "What is unusual of our resilience package is that the government will be using our past reserves to fund two main components of the package, the Jobs Credit Scheme and the Special Risk Sharing Initiative." It was a very reasonable question. Actually, it's a very polite objection, and it was right that he raised it, and we debated it. And our answer was, we are doing this so that we have dry powder. And there are current reserves. We may well need it later. We put that aside. If we need to, we will use it. As it turned out, fortunately, we didn't need to. 2 years later, in 2011, when the government paid the $4 billion back to the past reserves, Mr. Low spoke again. He did the honorable thing and commended the government. And he said, in the budget debate again, 2011, "In conclusion, sir, the budget this year has done one thing right. It has prudently put back into past reserves the $4 billion that the government took in 2009. So this is how a responsible opposition conducts itself. There was a common commitment to safeguard our past reserves and a recognition, shared recognition, that they are a strategic asset only to be used for unprecedented circumstances. Now, I hear the opposition arguing that we should change the rules and draw more from reserves, and that, of course, they have no intention to raid the reserves, far from wanting to bankrupt Singapore. They say we can easily afford what they are proposing. I conclude their tune has changed. May I remind them that the changes they are proposing are not simply policy changes, but require amending the Constitution to draw and to spend more from past reserves, which are protected by the President. Some people say it's harder for this generation to abide by the same tight fiscal rules as before. They say that now growth is slower, the cost of living has gone up, which is true. But our forefathers who put aside the surpluses which grew into the reserves were much less well off than us. To put it bluntly, much poorer than us. Our standard of living is double or triple what our forefathers lived with. And yet they saved up surpluses for the future, whereas now we hear arguments that we should draw more from the reserves on the basis that we need the money more urgently today.
I can understand the political urge to cherry pick what Mr. Low says. I understand that. But Mr. Low also has shared many views on the GST in this House. So I hope to hear the front bench quoting him on the GST in future.
First, on Mr. Low Teow Kiang and the GST. Yes, indeed, he did regularly oppose the GST every time, introducing it at 3%, pushing it up from 3 to 5, which I did, going from 5 to 7, which Mr. Tharman did as finance minister. And we reminded the WP of this, only to be told by your ex-MP, Mr. Leon Pereira, that now that it has reached 7%, you don't oppose that, but you oppose going to 9. So Hansard is an open book. We can all refer to it readily, and soon we'll be able to do a generative AI search on it, and all these facts will come out, and I'm not hallucinating.